Sorry. Patience for everything. Very true. All right, I will say good morning. Let's begin with a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Daf Tzadik Vav 96. Really beautiful daf. We are picking up on Daf Tzadik Vav Amud Beis with Meisvei. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. Let's actually go 2 lines up from that. So 12 lines up from the bottom. Hahu Tanura. Do you see it? Hahu Tanura. Again, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines up from the bottom. So we'll say, so remember again, 95B. 95B. Right where we left off yesterday. I'm just start going back 2 lines above. Meseches Zevachim, Seder Kodshim. This is the Daf Yomi Shir. Hey, good morning. All right, good. So let's begin. So we're picking up. So Hahu Tanura. So remember again, we're speaking about blios. We're speaking about absorptions in kalim. So the Gemara says as follows: Hahu Tanura da'atchu beit tichyo. So we read this yesterday, but you'll see why I want to pick up with it because it feeds into the meisvei. So there was a particular oven that was coated with tichyo. Rashi says over here, min tigun she'osin milechem v'tachit tashin hatanur ba'alyo. So they would coat the oven with fat, and they would bake the bread in the oven. And I will say, remember again, when they baked bread in Talmudic times, very often what was done is that the bread was stuck on the side of the oven. So the idea is if you smear the oven with oil, then essentially Rashi says it's almost like a frying process that takes place with the baking of the bread. So you have a tanur that's smeared with this alyo, with this fat, and they're baking the bread on it. So what's the halacha? So Asra Rabbi Bar Ilai lemechle l'rifta li'olam. So remember again, we read this yesterday. Sarah Bar Ilai said you cannot eat the bread. The bread is asr for consumption. Afil b'milcha, even if you're just going to eat it with salt. Why? Dilma asi lemechle mekuscha. But say what was Rabbi Bar Ilai concerned about? He was concerned you're going to eat it with milchik. So remember again our kusach dip, right? The moldy bread, the curdled milk, all formed together to go ahead and make a dip. So Rabbi Eloi says essentially you cannot go ahead and eat fleshik bread. Even if you promise to go ahead and only eat it with fleshiks or with parrot, you still can't do it lest you come to consume it with milchiks. So Meisi Abba say, now here we go. So Gemara is the kasha, ein lashon es ha'isa v'chalav, v'im lash kalapas asura. So we'll say, so now the Brisa says as follows: you are not allowed to knead dough with milk, and if you do so, the entire loaf is aser. We'll say, so again, remember, same halacha, you cannot go ahead and make bread that is milchiks or fleshiks. One is not allowed to do that, and if you do it, the bread is aser. Why? Out of concern, what does it mean, hergel avera? Out of concern, again, that you're going to eat it with the wrong type of bread. Remember again, this is a unique halacha by bread. Why by bread? Why by bread? Because bread is a staple. Bread is consumed with all types of meals. So the idea is bread by definition is an entity which must remain pariv. Therefore, if you make it milchiks or fleshiks, Chazal said we don't want you eating it, lest you come ultimately to eat it with the wrong type of food. Kiyotzebo. Similarly, ein tashin esataner ba'alyo. You cannot go ahead and coat your oven with fat. V'im tash kala pas asura. And if you go ahead and you coat the oven with fat, then what? The bread that you bake in there will be asur because it'll be fleshiks. Ad sheyasik esatanor. Until what I was saying? Until ultimately, again, you go ahead and you burn out the tanner. We'll say, in other words, until you go ahead and you kasher the oven. To which the Gemara says, Tiyufta de Rabbi Bar Ilai Tiyufta. We'll say this effectively refutes the position of Rabbi Bar Ilai. Why? What did Rabbi Bar Ilai say? We'll say, see, Rabbi Bar Ilai said that oven which was coated with fat is what? So remember, Rabbi said the oven itself, not that the oven is usher, but any bread that is ever baked in that oven is usher. Rabbi Bar Eloi seems to say that ultimately there is no way to kasher the oven. That was, remember again, b'pashtus, when we speak about ovens, ultimately again, what type of material is it made of? Cheres, earthenware. So Rabbi Bar Eloi is saying once that oven becomes fleishiks, it's fleishiks forever. Now comes along the Gemara, and ultimately seems to say that what? No, you could actually burn out the oven, and the oven could once again become pariv. So the Gemara says this effectively refutes the position of Rabbi Bar Eloi. Amar li Ravina, Ravashi. So Ravina says Ravashi. So now that we've refuted the position of Rabbi Bar Eloi, and we say that you could go ahead and kasher even the earthenware oven. So the Gemara says, so Amai Amarav Kederos b'Pesach Yishavru. Why did Rav say that when you have vessels, right, when you have kederos, pots, again, the Pasha talking about earthenware pots, on Pesach, should be smashed? If that's the case that you can go ahead and kasher it, then why is there an obligation to smash it? Amarle Rav Mokila Ahi b'Shamateches. So what says the Gemara says, so one answer is that when the Brisa says that you can kasher the oven, Abosai, what is it talking about? It's talking about a metal oven. In other words, maybe the Gemara is suggesting over here that Rabbi Bar Eloi's statement and the Brisa's statement are actually talking about two different types of ovens. When Rabbi Bar Eloi says that the oven can never be kashered, what is he referring to? What is he referring to? He's referring to an earthenware oven. The earthenware oven can never be kashered. But when the Brisa says that an oven can be kashered, it's ultimately referring to a metal oven, a metal utensil. That's one possibility. He has to reconcile it. But then the Gemara says, "V'yisema betano shel cheres." No, it could very well be that it's talking about a tano shel cheres, an earthenware oven. And the Brisa effectively refutes the position of Rabbi Bar Eloi and says that you can burn out an earthenware oven and kasher it, and thereby remove, in this case, its fleishik status. So why can't I do the same thing by earthenware vessels when it comes to Pesach? So you'll say, what we're learning over here, what it seems to be that we're learning over here is that what? That an earthenware utensil actually can be kashered. If it can be kashered, if the oven can be kashered, then why when it comes to Pesach do I have to smash the earthenware vessels? Why can't I just go ahead and kasher those vessels? To which the Gemara says, oh, I'll tell you why. But the Gemara says, so here's the fundamental difference. An oven is fired up on the inside. So because the oven is fired up on the inside, there is a much more intense heating process that occurs, and we'll say that the intensity of that heat has the ability to kasher even earthenware. Masha'in kain, when it comes to utensils, Rabbi, the heat is going to be on the outside, right? Because remember, you're heating the utensils, you will be heating the utensils from the outside. And if that's the case, again, it doesn't get hot enough ultimately to go ahead and purge an earthenware utensil. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand. So I have a simple eitzah. So put the heating element inside the kli. Take coals or take whatever, you take the fire and put it inside of the utensil. Thereby again creating like an oven-like experience, heating it up from the side. To which the Gemara says, no. So we're concerned that if you do that, what's going to end up happening? The person is not really going to kasher the kli sufficiently out of concern that what? Out of concern that it'll break. I will say we see this concept in kasher and kalim in different circumstances, that when a kli can technically be kashered, ultimately through a process, but that process could also break the kli. We get concerned that a person is not going to kasher it appropriately. And therefore, again, halacha l'maaseh, the Gemara says, we're concerned to let you heat up your earthenware vessel from the inside, because since there's the possibility of breakage, we're concerned that you're not going to do it the right way. Hilchach. Therefore, the Gemara says, Hai kubya hesiko mibachutzu va'asir. So we'll say, therefore, this kubya, this kubya is like an earthenware cylinder. An earthenware cylinder that you would put stuff into it, but the heating again was from the outside. So it was heated up on the outside. So you'd heat it up on the outside, you'd put, Rashi points out over here, sometimes they smear it with oil or with schmaltz, and you go ahead and you bake bread in it. So therefore, hai kuvya, hesiko mibachotsu, ultimately again it is heated up from the outside of the utensil, va'aser. And therefore, Abu say, if you were to go ahead, when we say aser, if you were to go ahead and coat it with, let's say, fat, then what? Any bread that would be baked in there would be aser, and the issur would be forever. Why? Because ultimately, again, there is no appropriate way to kasher it. top of Tzadik Vav Rabosai. Ella, Kedero Shal Mikdash, Amai Amrachmana Yishabru. So let's listen to this. Nahadrinu Lekivshonos. So we'll say, so now, I just want to point out what's happening over here is that we are advancing the idea that halacha l'maisa, you could burn out an earthenware utensil. It seems to Rabbi see we're often conditioned to assume that earthenware utensils cannot be kashered. Now it turns out we have to qualify that statement. Earthenware utensils can't be kashered when? Or I should say differently. Earthenware utensils can be kashered when the fire is on the inside of the utensil. In that case, there's such an intensity of heat that ultimately the earthenware utensil becomes kashered. What's an example of an earthenware utensil that's heated up on the inside? An oven. That's the simplest case. And by the way, that may be the only case. But any other situation of an earthenware utensil, even though you could heat it up, and even though technically speaking you could put the coals on the inside, because we're concerned that could break the kli, therefore because there's breakage is possible, we're concerned that therefore you're not going to do the kashering process appropriately, and therefore you can't kasher the kli cheres. Okay, those are the principles we're operating with now. The Gemara says based on that, what did we learn in the Mishnah? That when you have earthenware vessels used for karbanos, or we'll say, what do you do with them? What do you do with them? You smash them. Says the Gemara, why? Why not? Nahadrinu lekivshonos. Put them back into the kiln. I was supposed to say, if you're going to smash it anyway, so then what? I have nothing to lose by kashering it, by throwing it back into the furnace. If you throw it back into the furnace, I will say, that's certainly pretty hot, and that should kasher them. Amar Rabbi Zera, lefishen osin kivshonos b'Yerushalayim. Also listen to this. For one simple reason, there are no kilns to be found in Yerushalayim. But say, why are there no kilns in Yerushalayim? This is actually quite beautiful. Rashi says, "Ein osin kivshonos Yerushalayim mishum kutra," because we'll say a kiln creates an incredible amount of smoke. Smoke, the soot from the smoke, blackens walls, and that would erode, or that would take away from the beauty of Yerushalayim Yirah Kodesh. So therefore, again, I will say there was special. It's amazing, by the way, special legislation to maintain the beauty of Yerushalayim, no kilns. So the Gemara, what's very interesting about this answer is, the Gemara says, Einachinami, it would be possible. It would be possible, meaning if there was a kiln, technically speaking, you probably could do it. You could put it back in. But because there are no kilns in Yerushalayim, therefore by definition it becomes an impossibility. So beautiful, I'll say, so beautiful, by the way, just like how much Chazal, the love of Yerushalayim is something that is so embedded in the heart of the Jew, and that permeates everything we do, to the point that even what Chazal are consciously aware what will preserve the beauty of Yerushalayim, what will erode from it. The kilns are certainly necessary, but if the smoke will go ahead and cause soot to settle upon the walls of Yerushalayim, we don't want it. Amar Rabbi, v'chi osin ashpasos ba'azara. Here's the problem, says Rabbi. Okay, so now what you're telling me is, technically speaking, I can go ahead and return the earthenware vessels to the kiln. I could do it, and it works. I can't do it. Why? No kilns. Okay. So now what am I going to do with my earthenware vessels used for karbanos? What am I going to do with it? Smash it. Sabai says, so tell me, do we make garbage dumps in Yerushalayim? What Rabbi is dealing with over here is, you're going to be creating mounds and mounds and mounds of earthenware shards. In other words, at the end of the day, you don't want to put kilns in there because of the soot. That's fine, but just when you keep smashing, because I remember again, on any given day, there were a number of kohanim who were eating karbanos, owners who were eating karbanos. Everybody's smashing their kelim. So again, you're going to create a garbage dump in Yerushalayim. Supposed to listen to this. So ishtamite hadetani. Supposed to listen to this. So Abaye says. So the Gemara says Abaye forgot an important teaching. He forgot that which was taught. Shmaya bekol beno. We'll say, so Shmaya, when he was in the city of Kol Beno, Rashi says, Kol Beno Shem Makom, Shenikra Al Shem Avodos Kochavim. So apparently Kol Beno was the name of a city. It derived that name from the idolatry which was worshipped there. So we'll say, listen to this. So Abai forgot what Shmaya said in Kol Beno. What did Shmaya say in Kol Beno? Shivrei Klei Cheres Nivla'in Bim Koman. But we'll say, get ready for this. That's what? One of the miracles in the Beis HaMikdash is that the pottery shards were swallowed up into the ground. Can you imagine this? Right? So one of the miracles, one of the ongoing miracles in the Beis Hamikdash, pottery shards swallowed up into the ground. Therefore, what? Therefore, no problem of creating garbage dumps in Yerushalayim, because literally, again, the refuse was swallowed up. Incredible, I will say. Absolutely incredible. Ella, Hada Amrav Nachman Amrav Baravua. So we'll say, but yet, again, let's go back for just a moment. That which Rav Nachman said in the name of Rav Baravua, Tanur Shal Mikdash Shal Matechas Hava. So let's remember again, there was an oven in the Beis HaMikdash. Now we're going to discuss why there was the need for an oven, but there was an oven in the Beis HaMikdash, and it was made out of metal. Now, Bepashtos, we say, why was it made out of metal? So Bepashtos will say, why? To be able to kasher it. Because remember, let's assume for a moment that you're using that in the preparation of sacrificial meat. So the problem is now that sacrificial meat absorptions, you need a way to kasher it. Because remember, again, we'll say, what happens if you cook a carbon in a utensil? And now let's say, again, it's a day, 2 days, 3 days later, what's the status of those absorptions? They become no sar. So therefore, you need a way to purge the utensil. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Navid decheres, desiko mi bifnim. But again, actually, based on what we learn, you didn't have to make it in metal. You could have made it out of what? You could have made it out of earthenware. Why, Rabbi say? Why? Why? Because you could kasher it. Why can you kasher it? Because the fire is on the inside. In other words, it gets hot, even in this case, earthen, meaning, both say it appears that aside from Rabbi Bar Eloi, everybody agrees that if you have an earthenware oven that can be kashered, because the heat source is on the inside, it gets hot enough. To which, so why not make the oven in the Beis HaMikdash out of cheres and not out of metal? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Keivan di'ika shtei alechem v'lechem aparam daf yaseh betanor u'kedushasan betanor havele klisharis u'klisharis dechares lo avdinan. To which the Gemara gives a very interesting answer. What was the oven used for? So we assume that because we're all over the karbanos right now. So therefore, again, I'm assuming that when there's an oven in the Beis Hamikdash, it is used for the preparation of sacrificial meat. Remember, again, you're a Kohen, you get your sacrificial portion. We already learned that how do you have to eat your sacrificial portion? Any way you want it, right? Any way you want it. So therefore, there's an oven for me to use if I'm a Kohen to prepare my sacrificial portion. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But says the Gemara, there's another reason why that oven is there. That's the oven in which they baked the lechem apanim. The lechem apanim will say is the showbread, which goes on the shulchan, the 12 loaves which go on the shulchan. Furthermore, again, there's also the shtei lechem. Also, the shtei lechem was the unique loaf offering that was offered up by Shavuos. So we'll say, so what do I see from here? I'm actually baking stuff for sacrificial purposes in that oven, inside the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, again, I will say, because I am using that oven to what? To go ahead and bake items that are used for sacrificial service. Therefore, it has the status of a klisharis, of a service utensil. Once it has the status of a klisharis techares lo avdin. I will say, we do not make service utensils out of earthenware. Why not? Why not? I will say, because ultimately it's not bakavadik. Not bakavadik. For klisharis, I will say, klisharis have to be made either out of gold, out of silver, out of copper, some type of precious metal, but ultimately, again, not earthenware. It's incredible. We'll say, so Amud Beis. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, lo ka'amar. So we'll say, even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, who says that no, you could go ahead and make a klisharis, even out of non-metals, even he will agree that only refers to eights. That also allows you to go ahead and make a klisharis from wood. Aval decheres lo, but I will say everyone agrees that you cannot go ahead and make a klisharis out of earthenware. So I'll say, so therefore again, so what's interesting over here, just so we're following, it still appears that everybody is agreeing that halacha l'maisa, I can go ahead and kasher an earthenware oven since the heat source is on the inside. Based on that, so why not go ahead and make the oven in the Beis HaMikdash out of cheres, to which the Gemara essentially answers, because what's the status of that oven, I will say? What's the status of that oven? It's a klisharis. And because it's a klisharis, because it's a service utensil, it cannot be made out of cheres, it has to be made out of metal. Incredible. We'll say there's so much that's coming out from these sugyas, absolutely amazing. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, Rav Yitzchak bar Yehuda. Okay, so the Gemara now tells a story. Again, don't get excited. It's not like a story. It's just like a maisa. So Rav Yitzchak bar Yehuda. So listen to this. Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda, Havaragil Kamei Drai Bar Chama. This is a very profound. This is actually a very profound exchange. So Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda used to learn by Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama was his Rebbe. This is Rebbe used to learn by him. Shavke v'Azel l'Rav Sheshas. One day, Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda decided he wanted a new Rebbe. He wanted a new Rebbe. It happens. He wanted a new. Now we'll discuss why he did this. He wanted a new Rebbe. So he goes ultimately again to learn by Rav Sheshas. Yom Echad, one day, Pagabe. So we'll say, so one day, Rami Bar Chama, who was the old Rebbe, right, the first Rebbe, runs into his former Talmud Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda. And he says, Amrlei, Al Kafta Nakton, Reicha Asi La Liyad. So we'll say, so literally translated, this apparently was an old saying. Al Kafta Nakton, just because the nobleman took your hand, Reicha Asi La Liyad. Do you think the scent came to you? So it works much better in the Aramaic, but you understand, meaning, right? Because the nobleman took your hand, are you now as fragrant as royalty? Now, what does that mean? So mishum da azlis lecha lekamei Rav Sheshas, havis lecha ki Rav Sheshas. So we'll say Rami Bar Chama says to his Rami Bar Chama, who's the first Rebbe, says to his Talmud Rabbi Yitzchak, do you think that because you went to learn with Rav Sheshas, that now you're as great as Rav Sheshas? You think because you learned with him, ultimately again you're as great as him? Now take a look at Rashi for just a moment. It's the last of the wide lines on the top of Rashi. Al kafta naktan recha asi leiliyad mishum da azlis lechal lekamid Rav Sheshas havis chak Rav Sheshas. Rashi says mashalhu al gase haruach. This was an expression that people used to use for arrogant people. Shemishtadlin la'amod bimkom gidolim. So we'll say, so because sometimes arrogant people try to like rub shoulders with other great noblemen, right? Other great people. V'omar haduchus achzani biyad, and they would say, look, the nobleman took me by the hand. V'reach hamalucha niklat l'soch yedei al kafta duchus. And what happens? Because I'm staying next to the nobleman, because he took my hand, so the scent of royalty has now devolved upon me. In other words, they're both saying, sometimes arrogant people just like to rub shoulders with great people because it gives off the image that what? That they're great as well. So what's amazing about this exchange? Rabbi Bar Chama says to Rav Yitzchak, what do you think? You think because now you left me and you went to learn with Rav Sheshas, that's what? That you're great? You think you're hot stuff? You think you're important? You think you're chashiv now because you rub shoulders with Rav Sheshas? Just because you learn with Rav Sheshas doesn't mean that you're like Rav Sheshas. So listen to this, Rabbi say. So the Gemara says, Amar le lav mishum hachi. To which Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda says, Rabbi, that's not the reason I left you. So we'll say, by the way, even before we go on, what's dramatically amazing about this exchange? Rabbi Bar Chama is hurt. Rabbi Bar Chama is offended. Right? Rav Yitzchak, who was his Talmud, I'm sure Rabbi Bar Chama put incredible kochos and incredible time into this young man, Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda, and Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda left him. Rami Bar Chama was hurt. So we'll say, we're going to see Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda has a reason why he left Rami Bar Chama with learn Rav Sheshas, but apparently he never explained that reason ultimately again to his Rebbe, to Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda, and Rami Bar Chama. And Rami Bar Chama therefore is offended. We'll say, it's an incredible yesod. First of all, again, to recognize that even great people have feelings, right? Even Rabbi Bar Chama, even the great Rabbi has feelings, and I will say ultimately again, it's a lesson in sensitivity. How again to if we do have to make certain changes or dramatic changes in life, to somehow figure out how to explain those things to the people who live with us day in and day out, to make sure they don't get offended or read in a sub-narrative into those changes that may or may not be true. It's just very striking. Rabbi Bar Chama clearly is hurt because he says to Rav Yitzchak, "What you think you're greater? You think because you went to Rav Sheshas you're greater?" In other words, we'll say, what's the subtext to this? The subtext to this is, I wasn't good enough for you. Right? I wasn't good enough for you. What is it that you couldn't find with me that now you had to go to Rav Sheshas? It's an incredible exchange. To which Rav Yitzchak says, Rebbe, you're misunderstanding. I didn't leave you because I needed a greater Rebbe. I left you because of the following situation. Marki ba'ina milsa. Because Rabbi say, now this is Rabbi Yitzchak speaking to his first Rabbi, Rami Bar Chama. He says, Rabbi, here's the issue. Mar ki ba'ina milsa, whenever I would ask a question from Rabbi, Pashit le, meaning Rabbi being Rami Bar Chama, Pashit le misvara. So Rami Bar Chama, Rabbi, you would answer me with logic. So I'd ask a shayla, and you would answer me based on your own logical derivation. The problem was, ki mashkachna masnisa parchala. The problem is when we found a Mishnah or a Brisa which contradicted your logic, then what? Then what? The logic was in Rabbi. Remember again, Rabbi Bar Chama is an Amora. So essentially, what Rabbi Yitzchak was saying is, Rabbi, here's the problem. I would ask you a shayla, we would learn together, you would give me an answer based on your svara, your logic. It was an excellent answer. The problem is, when we found the Mishnah or a Brisa which contradicted you, then what? Then what? Remember, a Mishnah Brisa is a Tanaic statement. So because it's from a Tana, it'll always go ahead and simply negate that which an Amora says. So the problem is, you would give me svara, but you would never bolster that svara with any other Mishnah or Brisa. Rav Sheshes, ki ba'ina mil samina, so pashatli memas nisa. Dechinami mashkachas masnisa percha mimasnisa. Excuse me. Dechinami mashkachas la masnisa uparcha masnisa umasnisahi. To which Rabbi Yitzchak says, but when I went to Rav Sheshes, when you ask Rav Sheshes a shayla, what does Rav Sheshes Rabbi say? He answers the shayla from where? From where? From a Mishnah, from a Brisa. And therefore, again, even if there's another Mishnah or Brisa which contradicts his answer, it's okay. Why? Why? Because he's answering from Mishnah or Brisa. So again, we could live with a stira, with a contradiction between two Mishnayos or two Brisas. So we'll say, here, there's so much to say on this exchange. What Rabbi Yitzchak is saying is, Rabbi, you don't understand. I loved learning with you. I learned so much from you. The problem is, you gave me Torah, but it wasn't sustainable Torah. Because you gave me Torah which was based on your logical derivations, on your svara, which is incredible. The problem is, when your svara was contradicted by Mishnah or Brisa, your svara evaporated. I need learning that is solid and that withstands all the challenges and all the bombardments that may come. When I go to Rav Sheshes, answer Rav Sheshes Akasha, Rav Sheshes gives you an answer, and it might also be svara, but he always gives you a Mishnah or a Brisa to back it up. And once the answer is backed up by Mishnah or Brisa, then what? Then what? Then it's ironclad. Then it's ironclad. So listen to this. Rabbi Bar Chama says, "No, give me a chance." Amrlei, buy me name So the ifshad l'chalkimas nisa. So also listen to this. It's actually such an amazing exchange. Rabbi Bar Chama says, "No, give me another chance. Right? Give me. He wants his Talmud back. Ask me a question, and I'm going to answer you from my svara, and we'll see. I'll show you that the Mishnah agrees with it. So what's the case? Buy me name. So this is actually quite interesting. Buy me name. So this is Rav Yitzchak asked Rami Bar Chama the following kasha. Barmine, Bishel b'miktas kli, Talmuriko shtifa o ein ton. Well, listen to this interesting shayla. If let's say you cook something sacrificial in a kli, we'll say you only cook in part of the kli. In other words, only part of the kli is used. The rest of the kli remains untouched by the sacrificial. And so for example, a very simple case. Let's say I'm frying something. I'm frying a carbonic item. So what do? I tilt the pan. So I'm only going in and frying in one chelik of the pan. The rest of the pan never comes in contact with anything to do with the sacrificial item. So what's the shayla? The shayla is, do I have to do marika and shtifa only on the part that came in contact with the food, or do I have to do marika and shtifa on the entire kli? To which the Gemara says, I'm sorry. So Tamarika Shtifa, ein ton. Amalei, to Rabbi Bar Chama said, ein ton. You do not require Marika and Shtifa on the entire kli. You only require Marika and Shtifa on the part where the food touched. Why? Midi dahava ahazah. Boss, this is actually amazing. Because the truth is, this is no different than the case hazah. We'll say, what does hazah mean? Hazah is the splattering, is the dam chatos. In other words, what is Rabbi Bar Chama answering? What happens, we'll say, when dam chatos splatters on an article of clothing? What do you have to clean? Only the spot itself. Only the spot where the blood splattered itself. You don't have to launder the rest of the baguette. So Rabbi Chama says, just like you don't have to launder the rest of the baguette, only the spot where the blood splattered, so too what? So too when you go ahead and you use part of the kli, ultimately again to prepare the carbon, only the part of the kli which came in contact with the food requires marik and shtifa, the rest does not. But 1 second, but we did not learn this way. In other words, we don't find a Mishnah that seems to support this. Amrale mistabra kibeged. Turshai Bar Chama says, I think it's pashut, and I'll tell you why. I think a kli should be no different than a beged. Ma beged eino ta'un kibus ela makom dam. Af kli eino ta meriko shtifa ela makom bishol. So Bar Chama says, listen, I don't need a Mishnah, and I'll tell you why. A kli, a utensil, is no different than a beged, no different than a garment. Just like the garment only requires laundering where? Where? In the place where there is the stain. So to the kli only requires marik and shtifa in the area where it came in contact with the food. But where there's no contact with the food, ultimately marik and shtifa is not required. Amarle, to which Rabbi says, so remember, this is all an exchange between Rav Yitzchak and his former Rabbi Bar Chama. So Rav Yitzchak says, Rabbi, I don't understand. Mi dami, how can you compare a beged to a kli? Dam lo mifafea, bishul mifafea. But see, here's the fundamental difference. Blood doesn't spread, but yet bishul does. What does that mean? When there's a stain of blood, so where is that blood? That blood is contained to what? To what? To the actual area on the article of clothing. Masha'in King, when it comes to bishul, so we know that there are blios. What happens with blios? Blios are mifafea. They spread throughout the kli. So the comparison between a kli and a beged is really erroneous. Va'od, furthermore, Tanya. So let's listen to this. So Rav Yitzchak says, Rabbi, there is a brisa. What's the brisa? Chomer b'hazah memeriko shtifa. The chomer memeriko shtifa me b'hazah. Well, it's so beautiful. So the brisa says there's a chumrah that hazah. Remember again, the case of hazah. Normally we say hazah means sprinkling. In this case, it's the splattering of the sacrificial blood, chatas blood, on the garment. There's a chumrah that hazah has over merika and shtifa, and a chumrah that merika and shtifa has over hazah. What is it? Chumrah b'hazah. We'll say, what's the chumrah of hazah over merika and shtifa? Shazah yeshna bechatos hachitzonios ubechatos hapinimios. So when it comes to hazah, so there's a din of kibos on a beged, which is splattered with chatas blood, whether that's from an inner chatas or an outer chatas. Furthermore, v'yeshna lifnei zrika. And I will say, whether that chatas blood splattered on the individual before zrika, after zrika, doesn't make a difference. There's a din of kibus, excuse me. Masha'in kain b'meriko and shtifa. We'll say, but this is not the case about merika and shtifa. There only is a din of merika and shtifa, I will say, from karbanos that are done on the outside. And furthermore, again, there's only din of merika and shtifa for what? Only after zrika, but not before zrika. Chomer meriko shtifa. So we'll say, what's the chomer that merika and shtifa has over what? Has over the splattering of the chatas blood. Shamariko shtifa no hagas bein bekachim kadoshim and bekachim kalim. We'll say merika and shtifa. I'm going to see this in the next mishnah. Applies in all cases, whether it's kachim kadoshim, kach archim. So we saw this in the last mishnah. Whatever type of sacrificial items, whatever you eat in a kli, there's a din of merika and shtifa on the kli. Bishal b'mikzas akli tal mariko, right, ushtifa kolakli. On the other hand, I will say, when it comes to going out and cooking, and even if you only cooked in part of the kli, the entire kli requires marika and shtifa. Mashein king baza, which is not the case baza. But say baza, if blood splatters on the article of clothing, only the spot of the stain requires kibus. The rest of the garment does not require kibbutz. So we'll say, what do you just see from here? An explicit brisa. What did the brisa just say? What did the brisa just say? That ultimately, again, although when it comes to hazah, although when it comes to the splattering of sacrificial blood, the din of kibbutz only applies to what? Only applies to what? The actual spot, the actual stain itself. When it comes to marika and shtifa, even if you only cooked in part of the kli, the din of marika and shtifa, we'll say, is on what? Is on the entire kli. So we'll say, so just so you follow now the entire back and forth of this exchange. This was the kasha that Rav Yitzchak asked his former Rebbe, Rami Bar Chama. If you only cook in part of a kli, ultimately again does the entire kli require merika and shtifa? To which Rami Bar Chama answered, no. What was the logic of his answer? He said, very simple. He says, because a kli is no different than a beged. Just like a beged only requires laundering where? On the spot of the stain, so to what? A kli only requires merika and shtifa, where Rabosai? In the area in which cooking was done. So, essentially, what does Rabbi come along and say? Rabbi says, Rabbi, you'll excuse me, but you're wrong. You're wrong. There's a mafurish brisa. What does the mafurish brisa say, Rabosai? That one of the differences between a beged and a kli is that although a beged will only require kibbutz in the spot of the stain, a kli will require marika and shtifa. We'll say where? Over the entire kli, even if only part of it is used for cooking. So we'll say, what does Rabbi Bar Chama respond? Amrale itanya tanya. Okay, I hear it. Good brisa. Shkoyach. Right? If that's the brisa you have, then certainly you should go with it. V'taima mai. We'll say, by the way, what is the logic? Why is that if you only use part of the kli, the din of marika and shtifa is still on the kli in its entirety? Because we'll say ultimately again we darshan it based on the phrase v'im b'kli nechoshes. Even if you're only using b'kli nechoshes, part of the kli, nevertheless the din of marika and shtifa devolves upon the entire kli. So we'll say, so what's amazing about this exchange is that, well, then first of all, that is halacha l'mais. That's how the Rambam paskins. Tzadik Vav 96b, first wide line. So I'll say, so now what the Gemara essentially says is as follows: that halacha l'maisa, even if you only cook in part of the kli, the entire kli requires marika and shtifa. But by a beged, you only have a din of kibos where? On the actual spot of the stain itself. But I will say, amazingly enough, remember, this Rav Yitzchak says, Rabbi, I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. This is why I left you and I went to Rav Sheshes, because you give me answers based on svara. And your svaras are excellent. The problem is when your svaras are contradicted by a mishnah, by a brisa, we're left without anything. And here's a perfect example where Rabbi Bar Chama gave an answer based on svara, and we'll say the svara is a pretty solid svara, but yet it turns out that his svara was wrong. All right, so let's go back there. So it says the Gemara. So let's remember again. So the Mishnah recorded a machlokes ultimately between Reb Shimon and the Tanakama. So the Tanakama said that whether you use a utensil for kadshe kadoshim or kadshim kalim, the kli requires marika and shtifa. Reb Shimon says kadshe kadoshim yes, but kadshim kalim no. We'll say let's analyze this. Says the Gemara Tanarabanan. We'll say second wide line Tzadik Vav Amud Beis 96b. Tanarabanan chatos ini ela chatos. I only know that if the kli is used for a chatos, ultimately again it requires marika and shtifa. That's all I know. But ultimately again, I'm sorry. Kol kodshim minayin. We'll say, how do I know that the din of marika and shtifa ultimately again applies to all sacrificial items? Talmud Omar kodesh kadoshim hi. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says kodesh kadoshim. Yachal shani bar be'asat truma. What it may be, even if you use a kli for what? For truma, there should be a din of marika and shtifa. Talmud Lomar osa. Therefore, the pasuk says it. We'll say osa is a limiting or an exclusionary word. Prat l'truma divrei Rabbi Yehuda. We'll say this comes to exclude truma. So therefore, again, there's a din of marika and shtifa by any sacrificial item, but not by truma. If you use the kli for truma, there is no din of marika and shtifa. These words Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says no. Kadshe kadoshim tuna marika shtifa. Kadshim kalim ain't tuna marika shtifa. Rabbi Shimon says it is only kadshe kadoshim which require marika and shtifa, but kadshim kalim do not. Where do we get this from? We'll see it's a very straightforward limud. D'chsiv kodesh kadoshim. Because we'll see actually the pasuk says kodesh kadoshim. Kadshe kadoshim in, kadshim kalim lo. Ultimately, again, it's only kodesh kadoshim that have a din of marika and shtifa. Kadshim kalim do not. My taima. Rabbi Yehuda. We'll say, what's Rabbi Yehuda's logic? Midi itzdirich osa lemeute truma. So Rabbi Yehuda says like this: since I need the word osa to exclude truma, and to tell me that if I eat truma in a kli, it doesn't require marika and shtifa. Michlad the kadshim kalim tuna marika shtifa. We'll say that would seem to indicate that what? So we'll say if I need to exclude truma, that means if I need to exclude it, that means the havamina is, or the havamina was, that truma would require marika and shtifa. If so, now we're saying truma doesn't. But if truma doesn't, what does? It must be both kadshe kadoshim and kadshim kalim. For Reb Shimon Amar Lacha Usa Kida Aminon Utruma Lo Bayish Shtifa. Sorry, Kida Aminon. We'll say so. Ultimately, Reb Shimon who says that ultimately again we use the word Osa ultimately to teach us another limud as espoused above. Rashi points out over here we learned the drasha, that the more complicated drasha that he makes on Daf Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph. So the Gemara says, "O truma lo by shtifa marika." Is that true? That ultimately, again, by truma, if you put truma in a kli, it doesn't require marika and shtifa. V'vatanya, but we learned kedera shebi shabal basar. But listen to this case: if you went ahead and you cooked meat in a pot. Lo yivashal b'al chalav. Well, so it's just stam yaradei over here. Listen to this. If you cook meat in a pot, just good halacha. You cook meat in a pot, and therefore we'll say you should not go ahead and cook milk in the pot afterwards, right? Why? What's the logic? Why not? Blius. We'll say absorptions, because remember again, even though there's no meat in the pot, and even though now the pot is scrubbed clean, there are meat absorptions inside of the pot. Therefore, I cannot go ahead and cook milk in there. Vim bisha, we'll say what happens if I did? But no same time. Then ultimately, again, we measure the taste infusion. We measure the taste infusion, and we figure out, is there enough meat absorptions in there to go in and infuse taste into the milk? And if there is, then the milk will be asr. Excuse me, right? Then the milk that you cook in the pot will be asr. So the Gemara says, watch this. So you have in bisham, but no same time. Truma lo yivashal b'chulin. We'll say similarly, if you cooked truma in a pot, you should not go ahead and afterwards cook chulin in it. We'll say it's the same logic, which is what? Which is that halacha l'maisa, what we're concerned about is that if you cook truma in a pot, now there's what? There's truma blios, there's kadosh blios in there. Which means, so let's say I lent my pot to my Kohen friend, he cooked this truma, that's fine. The problem now is I want to cook my chulin, but the truma absorptions are in there. V'im bishal, so we'll say therefore you shouldn't cook it in the pot. V'im bishal, but if you did cook in the pot, if you did go ahead and cook in the pot, then what? But no same time. Ultimately, again, we'll say we measure the taste infusion. If there be a real taste infusion of truma, then ultimately, again, it is problematic. So, Amar Rabbi, so we'll say, so now, what do you see from here? What do you see from here? You see that halacha l'maisa, again, truma does leave absorptions. If truma does leave absorptions, then what Rabbi was saying? Then when you use a kli in the Beis HaMikdash for truma, it should require what? Merik and shtifa. Just like everything else that leaves absorptions. To which the Gemara says, Amar Abaye lo tzricha elo l'da'amar mar. So we'll say, Sabai says, no. Here's how to interpret it. We'll say the Gemara gives a couple of different answers. So elo da'amar mar, bishal b'miktzas kli, tamarik and shtifa. So we'll say, so Abaye says, here's the distinction between truma and everything else. When it comes to all other sacrificial items, as we just established above, that halacha l'maisa, if you go ahead and you eat a sacrificial item in a kli, that kli requires merik and shtifa. Now, even if you only use part of the kli for the preparation of the food item, you have to go ahead and do merik and shtifa on the entire kli. Ha-truma lo tzarach ela makom bishul. Truma, however, is more lenient than other sacrificial items. That by truma, I will say the halacha is, if you only use part of the kli, you only have to do merik and shtifa on that part of the kli. Rava Amar, so we'll say, so it's a kula that truma has over other items. Rava Amar lo tzricha el d'amar mar. So Rava says, no. Here's the distinction between truma and everything else. B'mayim. So we'll say the halacha is merik and shtifa has to be done with water. When the pasuk says b'mayim, v'lo b'yayin. You can't do merik and shtifa with wine. B'mayim v'lo b'mazug. So we'll say you can't even do it with heavily diluted wine. Ha afilu b'yayin afilu mazug. So we'll say truma is more lenient. So with other items you have to do merik and shtifa with water. You can't do it with wine or even with diluted wine. But when it comes to truma, you can even do merik and shtifa even with wine or even with diluted wine. Rabbi bar Ula Amar lo tzricha elo d'amar mar merik or shtifa b'tzonin ha afilu b'chamin. So we'll say, to which now the other distinction is that ultimately merik and shtifa for other items is hot water and then cold water, but ultimately again for truma all you need is the hot water, not the cold water afterwards. So that's fine according to the opinion. It says that merik and shtifa is with cold water. But according to the opinion, it says that merika is done with hot water, shtifa is done with cold water. What is there to say? Shtifa yiseirasa. That secondary immersion or washing in cold water is extra. Other sacrificial items require it, but truma does not. So we'll say, so therefore again the way we end off over here is by understanding that halacha l'maisa. So truma, if you use a kli for truma, it does require merika and shtifa. The difference is that the laws of merik and shtifa are much more lenient ultimately by truma than they are by other items. By other items, if you use part of a kli, right, by sacrificial, if you use part of the kli, you have to do merik and shtifa by the whole kli. By truma, only the part of the kli that you used. By other items, merik and shtifa has to be done with water, can't be done with wine. By truma, it can even be done with wine. By other items, ultimately, merik and shtifa means first a rinsing or a purging with hot water and a rinsing with cold water. By truma, it's enough just to do the purging with hot water. You don't have to do the subsequent rinsing with cold water.